Hi guys, my name is Sasha. I hope you guys have been having a wonderful summer. I've been having a blast. Between all the fun things I've been doing, I always remember to fit in just a little bit of reading, which is why you can see all of these books here. These are some of the books I've been reading over the summer, and I thought I'd give you kind of like, you know on your TV how you have a watch list? Well, this is kind of a read list, what some of the best books are for people my age. By the way, if you don't really like reading, I can understand that. Not all people like the same thing, but it's good to read a bit. So some things to just get started on, just some fun random things, just magazines, comics. They have words in, you can read them, and they're fun to read. This one's probably one of my favourite magazines. It's called A Toxic Magazines. You can get them at $4.99 from most supermarkets, I think. And they're really fun. They're basically just comics, stuff about superheroes, stuff about gaming. It's just a lot of fun. Also, the thing underneath here, I used to love this book when I was like 3 or 4 years old. It's called The Snail and the Whale by Julia Donaldson. She was like one of my favorite authors back then. She also wrote A Squash and a Squeeze, The Gruffalo, Room on the Broom, Mog the Cat, and other things like that. She wrote a lot of books. Just saying, if you have a young toddler or something, this is a really good book to get. So, back to the main books. As you can see, I have a lot of Rick Riordan books. As you can tell, one of my most favourite authors anyway. And the amount of pages in here can look a bit scary, but they're actually really, really good books, and I got seriously addicted to these books. I was literally non-stop reading the entire series. So, this one's probably my favourite one ever. It's from the Heroes of Olympus series. It's called The House of Hades, and it's basically about two teenagers called Percy and Annabeth. They fall into this deep eternal pit of damnation called Tartarus. This is all Greek myths, by the way. If you're into that, these are some great books. And they're trying to survive the pit of damnation called Tartarus, trying to get to the doors of death, which is their only way of escaping, but befriends a titan, which is one of their enemies. So that's an interesting story about that. Next book, also by Rick Riordan, is called The Serpent's Shadow. This isn't actually Greek myth, this is ancient Egyptian myth. It's about, basically a family called the Cain family, and they have, like, long ancient Egyptian heritage, and two of the Egyptian gods have decided to inhabit two of these mortals who have, like, a long history. So that's a really interesting book. They actually have like a trilogy. This is the third book in this series and the last book. It's really good. I'm just gonna put all these Rick Riordan books here. Also, this isn't a Rick Riordan book, but it's quite an interesting thing by Charles Dickens. A Child's History of England. Quite interesting. Not Rick Riordan, but also really good if you want to learn some history facts. I think this one's another Rick Riordan book. Yeah, it's called The Trials of Apollo. Apollo is one of the ancient Greek gods, and he was banished from Zeus, the eternal god. Well, not eternal god, the king of the gods. He was banished from Olympus and sent down tumbling to the mortal world because he had upset Zeus. So that's the story about Apollo the god in mortal form. Again, this isn't a Rick Riordan book, but also a really important book. It's called The Secret. Quite a lot of people have heard about this, talked about it, and just like kind of a really deep philosophical, is that the word? Philosophical book. Yeah, I think that's the word. So, that's that. This, you might have seen my other video about this. It's the Diary of Anne Frank. If you haven't, go check that out. It's called basically The Story of Anne Frank, or something like that, I think. Basically, it's literally just the story of Anne Frank. She lived a really interesting life, but you can find more about that in my other video, so I won't talk about it too much. Next book, again, not a Rick Riordan book, but a really interesting book by Liz Kessler called Emily Winstapp and the Castle in the Mist. This is about a girl who's something called a semi-mer. She's human on land, but when she goes into water, she grows a mermaid tail. And if you have like a child or something who's really interested in mermaids, this is a really good series. It's actually a really long series. I think there might be like 8 or 9 books in the series. 8, 7, or 9, either one. So that's a really good book. Next book, this is a Percy Jackson, Rick Riordan book. This isn't in the Heroes of Olympus series, but this is the like original series, which is the Percy Jackson series, The Titan's Curse, which is basically when Percy had to go to this basically death mountain and try to rescue one of his friends. Very interesting book. Again, these last two are Rick Riordan books. They're both in the Heroes of Olympus stories. This is the last one, called The Blood of Olympus, basically where they have to defeat the Earth Mother Gaia, which she also has a really interesting story. There's actually a health shop called Gaia, and I think that's because Gaia was the Mother Earth. So yeah, and then this one is called The Mark of Athena. This is the third book, and basically when they start to begin their voyage in the Argonauts 2, to an ancient Greek land. Also, I'm pretty sure I've got some more books here. Let me just move this stuff. This is the last 3, so not many more. But, by the way, these aren't all the books I've read. This is just, like, basically highlights of my top ones. This one's called Beetle Boy. It's in a trilogy by M.G. Leonard. Really good book. And also, if you want to learn more about beetles, this is also a really good book to learn. And it's got some fun things as well. It's not just all about beetles. This is a book called Boy 87. It's a really inspiring book about a boy who was living under Taliban soldiers and had to escape, leaving his mother and his younger sister. Okay, the last book. This isn't a trilogy, but I think it's a part of like a 5-part book. Not sure if they're doing any more. But the Friday Barnes series by R.A. Spratt. Really good book. It's about detectives, basically. This young, eccentric girl called Friday who learns to be a detective at a very posh private school. Right, guys, I think that's all the books and all the time we have, unfortunately. So, if you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like if you want me to discuss any other books, any other famous people that I should talk about, and also any games consoles to basically do a review on, because I have done the Nintendo Switch, but more might be coming out soon, so look forward to that. Subscribe if this is the first video you've seen by me, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!